There's a lot of people that want to be first to market. They're all scared of saturation. Is it too crowded? Things like that. But then on the flip side of that, when you say, hey, there's this golden opportunity, there's a needle in a haystack right here. And if you enter and take this, I'll say risk in air quotes, if you take this risk with everybody else, it is very likely to pay.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hideaways Show, Behind the Curtain Edition. I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend of the Red River Gorge, and my co-host of the #1 short-term rental podcast in the entire nation, Mike Sebastian. Mike, how's it going, Chief? And how about them apples for an introduction?
I say, how does anybody live up to that? Whew! The pressure, I can feel it.
The legend of the Red River Gorge himself. That's what people are going to start referring to you as. I'm telling you, give it like 6 months. That's going to be you.
Hey, I'm going to be running around in a Sasquatch outfit at that point. Like, they've been talking about me for decades, dude. Bigfoot sprinting across the freeway.
There he goes. There he goes. Another unique short-term rental.
Oh, goodness. I'm good, man. I've been having a great week this week. I just went to the gorge yesterday. It was a great time.
I was going to say, you're looking at some stuff out there, looking at some land, looking at some views, and just shaking the hands, which is what it takes, man.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Shaking a lot of hands recently. It's been a blast.
Dude, it's
amazing.
Go.
It's amazing what happens when you like go down there and you just say like, hey, you want to meet up? And people are like, oh, you're here. That's rad. Let's do that. Let's go like grab a drink somewhere. Yeah.
No. It's got to be nice to be able to do that. For me, it'd be like, hey, let's go shake the hands. But like, I will be there in about, if I drive 8.5 hours. If I fly, it might also be 8.5 hours because I gotta stop in Chicago and then I way down. But I love the gorge. I think there's so much potential and so much opportunity there. And you really, it's been a very promising market. I mean, we had a perfect example of that market just being tremendous and us talking about guests out there. We had an AC issue just yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, this lady is gonna rip into me because it's 85 degrees in the house. It's 95 outside, it's 85 in the house. And she was so nice about it. She's like, don't worry, things happen, we totally understand. I think we're gonna move on from your place, just because they had dogs. I think they were worried about it happening again today, which we did get it resolved, so that was good. But I was like, man, like, she had every right to just be so upset and angry. And she's like, things happen, not your fault. And I'm like, I love that. The guests like that just make it so enjoyable when issues do pop up, to be able to handle them the right way.
We had the exact same issue in Georgia. I want to say 3.5 weeks ago. And the exact opposite result. I had Verbo call me. And they were like, your guest is saying, has a complaint, whatever. I had called him twice and texted him, and he never called me back. Then he called Verbo. Verbo called me. And I told him, I was like, tell him to leave and I'll refund him 100% of his reservation. Don't worry about it. So then they declined. They're not going to go anywhere. And I was like, I have an AC guy that'll be there at 9 a.m. I was like, 9 a.m. And he was like, called me and lost it. He was like, you need to have someone bring me a portable unit immediately. And I was like, dude, I don't have anybody to bring you a portable unit. So I told you that I'll give you all your money back. You've been there for 8 hours already. I was like, I will give you all your money back. Like, you go do what you need to do. He declined again, said he was going to stay there. At 11:30 at night, he messaged me and he's like, we're going to go find another place to stay. You need to refund 100% of my reservation. And I was like, dude, you've completely ruined the house. You've showered. You've done like everything at this point. Like, it was completely used house. So I was like, at least you're going to pay a cleaning fee, because I was like, I understand the discomfort, but at the same time, you chose to be there at that point. I can't tell you, him and his wife have called me 25 times since then.
Still?
Freaking out about the fact that since they left, that I charged him a cleaning fee, because it's completely unacceptable. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I gave you the opportunity to leave. You declined. You stayed until almost midnight and then blew me up at midnight. Told me you were going somewhere else. His whole thing was there's no other place to stay. But then at midnight, there was another place to stay. And I was like, doesn't make any sense. So,
he was just coming up with stuff. But again, like, not many people think about that when they go into a market. Like, and again, it's hard to tell like what certain guests will be like unless you talk to someone who's in that market. And I know you were in the gorge before I came in, and then I transitioned from Texas to the gorge. and it was like night and day. Like, I was like, there are guests like this out there that are actually nice and polite and respectful versus like, again,
Yeah.
not everyone was like that in Texas, but there were some people. It was just like, oh my gosh, like then you start to scratch your head. You're like, man, like, do I really want to do this hosting thing? And then you're out in Kentucky. It's like, I
Yeah.
want guests every day. Like these people are so
Yeah.
nice. And some of the
Shoot, the
stories are just funny.
the more guests that stay with us in Kentucky, the more things that get fixed
That's
because
right.
they're like, "Oh,
Seriously.
I remember the squeaky door." I was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "I'll send someone out there." The door was like real squeaky, and they're like, "No, no, we just stopped by the store and fixed it for you."
Yeah. So
Great.
you didn't know you every single guest could possibly also be a handyman. So it's a 2 for
Yeah.
1. You got revenue
Yeah.
coming in and you're doing maintenance on the property at the same time.
Yeah.
I think
Can't
it's an
beat it.
amazing strategy. Yeah, I think it's perfect. But no, we are not talking about guests and stuff like that. What we are talking about today, we've started the week talking about it. We've continued throughout the week. We're going to continue on this podcast is research methods for unique short-term rentals because I know a lot of people I think people get excited about the concept of unique short-term rentals, right? But they don't know where to start. They don't know how to do the research, and a lot of times they'll be like, "Well, there's no data. Like, how do I know what this property is gonna do? How do I know this thing's actually gonna perform versus just putting my trust into the property itself and being, fingers crossed, hopefully this thing brings in $3,000 cash flow per month, you know?" So, but I wanna
That's that is a conversation that I was having this morning, actually, with some people that are interested. There's a couple people that I'm friends with that are from the traditional banking industry. And they, every time that we've sat down to talk, we go through this circle of, well, where are the comps and where are the people that have done it? And where's the sale history? And why can't I find anything on Redfin? And all of the normal stuff. Any real estate investor that's been doing it for any number of years would start in the exact same place. All right, let me go on Redfin. Let me go pull some data. Let me see the price history of everything. And I will say specifically in the Gorge, good luck. You want a competitive advantage, figure out how to find that information because it is not there. I think 70 to 80% of the houses that are sold in Gorge are sold off market. And out of all of those houses, the deeds are on paper in a deed book in the county clerk's office, and you cannot find them online. One day you will be able to, but I doubt it'll be the next 5 years. And that is a huge barrier to entry for people that want the traditional, let me run it in my model, see if it works, and then move forward. It'll be very interesting to see how they overcome that because it just doesn't exist. Like it's just not there.
right. And by the time they do, the market will have progressed so much to where, you know, those properties you probably do find on Zillow and run the numbers just won't more than likely make sense because all of these off-market deals that have happened, the competition has increased, the number of hosts that are in that market and short-term rentals that are in that market has increased as well. So it just makes it even more
Yep.
challenging.
Yep.
So,
Yep. It
but
is pretty wild to me to look at. It's interesting because it's like the part for me is everyone wants to be, not everyone. There's a lot of people that want to be first to market. They're all scared of saturation. Is it too crowded? Things like that. But then on the flip side of that, when you say, hey, there's this golden opportunity, there's a needle in a haystack right here. And if you enter and take this, I'll say risk in air quotes, if you take this risk with everybody else, it is very likely to pay off. Right. Then the very next thing is, well, where's all the data? Well, the data comes from everyone else being first. Right. The data is our Airbnbs being scraped by AirDNA today. Right. Next year, the data will look very different than it does this year and so on and so forth. But I think that's part of the risk that everyone has to go through that nobody wants to go through because it does increase the risk, right? It doesn't fit the traditional model the way that I know how to research it. Therefore, I'm going to hold back. But then the moment, like you said, that you do, it's like, well, now 700 people have been there first.
right. And so you said something there that is spot on that I just realized with our property the other day is when I ran the numbers for our A-frame. And again, like good luck running numbers for an A-frame when there are no A-frames in the market. Like what I did is I looked nationwide and I pulled an average of like 30 of them. Like, okay, well, these are all different markets. Some are going to be higher than others. Some are going to be lower. Like if I do the average of these, I feel confident that I could hit around there because if everyone's paying for that type of experience, that type of property across the country, why would they not also pay that within the Red River Gorge? When I ran the numbers in AirDNA for a 3.2, I think it said I was supposed to make supposed to bring in like 40,000 or something. revenue for the year. I think I've done that to date already.
You have.
Yeah.
I was looking at your numbers this morning. You have.
Yeah.
I showed somebody that sheet just for like reference. Jordan brought me all the numbers or all the top performing A-frames across the United States. I think is how you pulled it. And there wound up being, let me see, I've got it right here. It was 21 different A-frames, all top performing, all different sizes, all across the United States, but all A-frame structures. The occupancy rates, I'm going to go down the list. 97, 91, 70, 77, 93, 95, 97, 99, 98, 86, 80, 96, 80, 95. I'm like, I can't show this to anyone. The average was 86. I was like, I cannot show this and nobody's going to believe me. And I was like skeptical. I was like, I don't know. I think something's wrong. I think A-frame has a miscategorization on AirDNA or something.
It's what I thought there was, the math was wrong. I'm like, the math ain't math and something's wrong here. This can't be real.
It's real.
Yeah. And that's where, again, some of these properties that are so unique, it definitely is more challenging to research those. But I mean, the A-frames, at least I had across the country, ways to go about like saying, okay, I feel relatively confident that I could do this. Now I went to a banker and I showed them that and they're like, well, those aren't legit comps because they're not in the same market. I'm like, I mean, I get that, but I can't get comps in my market because there are no A-frames in my market, but I can look across the country and show you with decent amount of confidence that this place will do. Even of the list of 21, I guarantee it will at least do what number 21 on that list is doing, which was like, like, I don't know, like 80,000 or something like that. Like, and again, we've done over 40 in, less than 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's, you can't always rely on AirDNA. Cause I mean, on the flip side, this is a perfect scenario in Texas. I ran the numbers for our beach house on our Fort 2 down there. It said we were supposed to do 110,000 and we didn't even surpass 70. Like it wasn't even close. Like, not granted, there were some things that happened and some reservations, but it still wouldn't have amounted up to 110,000 like it said. So, but I will say for the unique stuff, doing more of the research, there's a different approach to it. And there's 5 different lenses to be exact that you should look through when researching your properties.
Yeah. We wrote that. We've got a few steps. The way that you and I have been doing it, I think has worked out really, really well. Like first it's ideate, come up with the idea, right? Look across, find all these things, but then you want to prove to yourself that it's actually going to work, right? It's if you don't have comps because it's unique, I think that's the biggest thing to remember is if you're doing a one-of-one build, if you're doing something unique, you're not going to find anything next to it that has the exact same mock-up, exact same bed bath count. It's not going to have all the amenities that you're going to do because it's unique, right? That's kind of in the nature of it. If you had a bunch of others, it wouldn't be unique. So it throws you into all sorts of issues. So what we've done is we've broken down the fun, top of funnel awareness, sexiness, will this grab attention part. And then the secondary is the numbers, the logistics, like, does it actually math? Does the math, right? I think that's what you said. Math ain't math and don't go forward. But if it does, keep going. So today we're going to talk about the 5 lenses or the 5 different perspectives that we use to basically say, will this get enough attention, capture people over to your listing and get those reservations? The attention part of it to me, I think is the most important, because if they're going to scroll, imagine them like scrolling through any platform, right? Phones pretty much all work the same at this point. They're scrolling through Airbnb, they're scrolling through Vrbo, they're scrolling through Instagram, they're scrolling through TikTok, right? All the images are floating by. And it doesn't matter if it's interruption marketing where you put it in front of them in an advertisement, or if they typed in, I want to go to this city in Kentucky because my family goes there every year. And then they start scrolling to just those listings. You have to stop them, right? So I did an example earlier on Cincinnati, Ohio. There were 1,000 listings, over 1,000 is what it says, over 1,000 listings available. So it's you versus over 1,000 people to stop that scroll. And if you don't do it on their very first swipe up, then they're not coming back. They have 1,000 listings to go through. They're not going to come back. So where that really starts to matter is if you can't stop their scroll there, then the pool of people that you're going to have come over to your listing shrinks so dramatically. And then your conversion rate from the people that see your listing to the people that book with you is pretty much going to stay consistent. Might fluctuate a little bit, but you're not going to go from a 2% conversion rate to a 200 or 100% conversion rate based on any of the other criteria that you change in your listing. So it's going to be a consistent thing there. So what you want to do is maximize the number of people that go over to your listing. So it's called thumb stop for a very obvious reason. You're going to scroll and then you're going to stop it with your thumb. And you want to get as many people to stop and then click into your listing as possible. So the first perspective is a thumb stop ratio. Will it stop the scroll, right? Are you going to be able to capture their attention as they go through? The more number of people that you get through times the conversion rate that you have is going to be the number of listings that you get through. So if the thumb stop ratio goes up 100%, you should expect your listings to double. The second, go ahead. You got
So with the thumb stop, I think it also comes down to, and this is from like looking at it from like, will this property get people to stop and be like, we always say like, oh my gosh, look at this. I got to go stay at this place. And I think some people get discouraged when they hear unique to it, that they're like, oh, well, great. Like I need a container house. I need a 6-story container house overlooking the valley to just be unique. Like nothing else will be unique. I think there's other ways that you can do it to where it's a different photo, different style of photo. So it's if everyone has the front, the outside of their cabin showing up first, you could do the same thing, but do it in a different way. Maybe have the setting be at night or a sunrise or sunset or something that as they're scrolling, because if everyone looks the same, even if yours is unique but has a similar photography feel to it, there's still a decent chance that they're going to swipe by. You need the image to make that thumb stop and be like, wait, what was that? Like it needs to be something that stands out. And again, it doesn't need to be a 6-story container house. It can be I shouldn't say a standard single family home, but it could be a single family home that you have made unique and made stand out. That will also increase that thumb stop ratio.
Yep, 100%. And I won't increase it 100%, but I agree 100%. The other thing that we used to do in the advertising world is look at the platform. And so many people miss this part, right? There are so many little psychological triggers that you can do because people aren't thinking like, oh man, which one is the most attractive? Which one is going to catch my attention the most? They're just naturally doing it. It's just a innate feature in human beings. And that's honestly what we need to capture. We're not going to change these like human characteristics that have been around forever. They're going to look at things that catch their attention. So one of the things that you can do to do that is look at the platform. If 80% of your reservations come from Airbnb, go to Airbnb and just look at the platform. What color is the background? Is it square? Is it rectangle? Is it triangle? Is it any of these things? And then be different from that. So we used to do that on Facebook where we would look and it was typically gray, dark blue, or whatever the Facebook blue is, and white, and everything had 90-degree edges. So what we did is orange and yellow with diagonal lines, right? And you'd be amazed what that did to a click-through rate, just because people, they're just naturally, their eyes are like, oh, I got to like turn my head a little. What is this? I have to process it differently. And then all of a sudden they're looking at your stuff.
Yep.
So
that's spot on.
Yeah. So the second one that we do, second lens, and when you go through these, I guess before we get into the second one, when you go through these, you want to stop entirely. So you take your idea, you look at it and say, will this stop people in their scroll, right? If yes, cool, go to the next one, but then stop and start all the way back at the top. Because what you're trying to do is get to a no, right? Will it capture their attention? No. Okay, we'll scrap that idea, right? Find another. There's so many ideas out there that you're going to come up with when you start down this unique path. Like there's thousands that you'll never be able to implement. So when you go from step 1 to step 2, so thumb stop to emotion is number 2. When you go from that, you're going to start all the way at the top and say, will this idea capture emotion? Right? And emotion can be anything. You can make them sad. You can make them happy. You can make them excited. You can make them anything that you want. I recommend positive emotions because if you say, hey, it's scary and terrifying and costs a lot of money, those are bad emotions. People aren't going to want to come. But if you can capture emotion, both with the listing and with the photos, both of those things are important. And you build that emotion, then you are one step closer to having a reservation. So we do that a lot by capturing the experience, capturing people having fun at the listing. So are they in the hot tub? Are they cooking breakfast? Can you see a couple together sitting on the porch? That makes it really easy for me to envision being in that location with my spouse, having that time. I think Dustin Baker said, we sell the most amazing product in the world. We sell connection with family, time away from work, like reconnection, relaxation. We sell all those things. So if you can trigger those emotions with whatever your unique idea is, then that's a really positive thing. It's going to increase the awareness. It's going to increase the number of people that come through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I would tell you this, I was holding back. Um, the emotion piece, it's funny. Like, so I think, for example, Rockhaven, secluded in nature, beautiful views, quiet, peaceful, getaway, happy, like just like the perfect R&R situation. Since we have gained a lot of attention on our properties off TikTok, I've had 3 or 4 people comment. So maybe we should adjust our marketing a little bit. They said this place looks like it's straight out of a horror movie. And I'm like thinking to myself, but I'm like, okay, I guess it depends on how you look at it. In their mind, secluded in nature, no cell service, out like backcountry Kentucky. They're thinking like this
Yeah.
is just the recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I I just thought it was funny, but again, like
Would
it
you put
makes
in there like after your cell phone loses service and the lights go out in your car, just keep driving straight for 300 feet and ignore the chainsaw sound. So
exactly, but we do provide a hatchet for your safety just in
yes,
case you need to
yes,
defend yourself.
we
That's a
want it to be
unique
a fair chance.
No, it's like, but again, like, again, hey, maybe these people love horror movies. Like, I gotta go there.
Yeah,
We sparked an unintentional emotion in someone like, wow, that looks
yeah,
like straight out of a horror movie. I want to go. Now, is that the demographic we're going after? No. But it's just to say that emotion is such a powerful play because, I mean, at the end of the day, if those people, I more than likely they're not going to book because they don't want to go say somewhere that's straight from a horror movie. But we're getting people talking about it. We're sparking emotion in
yeah.
people. I mean, we're getting a lot of people that are like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. Perfect." We get a lot of people that are like, "Perfect for the anniversary. Perfect for our honey." I've even heard people saying like honeymoon. So we've sparked a romantic emotion within people. And
The other
it
thing that I'll say like about the negative emotion is if they're stopping and commenting, that helps the TikTok algorithm to show it to more. TikTok's not saying, oh, they wrote something bad. TikTok's like, you used our platform in the way that we want to use it. I'm going to reward this post with more visibility.
right.
And I think we've got 20 reservations since our views started going up in it on TikTok specifically, just from the posts that you're doing on there. So I would
Oh,
say all in all, that's a success.
hey, for the most part, any attention is good attention. So we have that,
Yeah.
we're rolling with it. But it was just to that point of emotion, like, again, like, will we ever do this? Probably not. But like, maybe we experiment with a property. Like, hey, like people keep saying this is straight up a horror movie. Maybe like come Halloween time, we really theme it to be a little spooky and eerie, and maybe we get people out
Yes.
there. I don't think we'll do that
Our,
because I think we get enough people for honeymoons and anniversaries. But it's,
yeah.
I will say it is things like that though. I have seen people, utilize photography and decorations for certain seasons and do tremendously well because what they have done is they've sparked that emotion for a cool, unique place, but also being like, oh my gosh, give me give me my pumpkin spice latte. I got to go stay at this place in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere while the leaves are changing, you know?
Quit talking specifically to our
So
target audience. Yeah. Yeah. No,
uh,
I'm with you. And you're right. Like I'll put an asterisk next to the, any attention is good attention. But when it comes to the algorithm, like having comments is a really good thing. If
right.
that's going to, increase who it shows to, fantastic. So
Yep.
the next one we have is value. And every time we talk about value, people think about financial value. And I think that if that's where your mind goes in providing value in an Airbnb, I'd say you need to reframe that entirely. Especially if you're targeting a younger demographic. We have a lot of people in their early 20s, mid to late 20s that are, I don't know how to say it respectfully. They want to be seen, right? It's important to be seen. And a lot of our audience or a lot of our target market comes out there because this is a place where they want to be seen. They want to say, hey, I stayed here. So that provides value to them, right? We gave them a place to take their Instagram shots. So they didn't have to buy a house. They didn't have to build a house. They were able to rent ours and enjoy their weekend. The other part is for the slightly older couples that are out there, maybe some of the younger ones too. There's a lot of value in disconnecting and connecting with your family, disconnecting from the internet, from the world, going down, this backwoods Kentucky place and taking your 4-wheel drive off road and then staying there and hanging out with your family. There's a lot of value to that. So a lot of different ways that you can create value. All of those should be visible in the photos, right? If you say that it's, or in your listing, I guess, maybe not just photos, but if you say that, you're secluded in nature, it's private, it's peaceful, there's a hot tub, we've got coffee makers and pots and pans to make breakfast, all of those things add up to an experience with your family. So that's what we're really trying to generate with that one. So the fourth one, I believe we're on four, is trust. So nobody is going to pull out their credit card and give you money, especially the money that we're asking for these rentals at this point. Nobody's going to do that if they don't trust you. If they think they're going to get scammed, if they think that, it's a fraud, anything like that, they're not going to, it's just a very simple fact. They're not going to pull out their card and buy it from you. So making sure that the way that you put it together is put together in a, you know, a trustworthy, a good build, the website works, like it goes to every aspect of it. And I think the trust has to do a lot with like the flow that you talk so much about and like the design and making sure everything flows together, but also the flow of the digital assets, right? So does your Instagram match up with your Vrbo listing, match up with your Airbnb listing when they go to transfer from one to the other, or your direct booking site? Is it a place that they can trust? So walking through that entire customer journey and making sure that that works. And if you have a unique listing, whatever it is that's unique needs to implement into that and increase the trust. So,
Yeah, and I
well,
think it's not skimping on certain areas to where I think some people will be like, "Oh, well, it's unique. I can just put anything out there and the thing's gonna do well."
yep,
And unfortunately, I think I mean, obviously, people do utilize I iPhone cameras are amazing, but I'll tell you right now, if like you had the greatest place in the world and you're just like snap, 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 snap with iPhone photos, sure, you're gonna get some bookings. But for me, like it just comes across as like, is this real? Like it literally looks like
yep,
the legend of the Red River Gorge himself pulled out his iPhone and took a bunch of
yep,
photos of this unique space. It's the whole package, right? And if like your description like looks like you took 2 seconds to put together and the design just isn't there, there's nothing unique about it. You went to the thrift store, bought a couch, um put a canvas on the wall, and that was about it. Like there there are some properties in the gorge that are absolutely gorgeous, very unique. But I think where you can tell where they dropped the ball, especially on the trust, and then also gaining the trust of the guests to come back again and again and again, is you go to their reviews and it's a gorgeous property. I'm like, man, this thing has to do so well. And they got 25 reviews and their star rating on Airbnb is like 4.4. And I'm like, they're missing something. You go through and look at it and it's apparent right away. Like the photos are meh. You can tell they just kind of like, pardon my language, they half-ass the design on the property. They only leave one roll of toilet paper out. They don't care about the guest communication. They aren't building up this level of trust to where if they trusted you enough to come stay the first time and you deliver on that and execute on the experience that they were seeking, there's a good chance they're going to tell everyone and their dog about your place and be like, you need to go stay at this place. I need to share it. I'm coming back again next year. I'm already booking my trip for next year.
yep,
Versus if you leave one roll of toilet paper out, you had no coffee pods for them. You said it was going to be unique, but they got there and it wasn't what they expected. The photos weren't great. Like you've just deteriorated your trust for a long-term
yeah,
relationship with that guest to where it's just, and
yep,
that goes for unique or non-unique, but especially for unique. If you're going to deliver on that, a lot of times people are willing to pay more upfront to come and experience that. You want to really
yep,
burn a bridge quickly is, you know, showcase that in a way through your listing and not deliver on it on the back end.
yep. There are so many people doing that too, and they don't understand that. Like, I don't know, it's interesting until it's like really interesting. There's a high that you get from like launching a new listing and having it go really right. But there's a 10 times lower low that you get from not delivering and seeing that high just crash. It's like all of a sudden the review starts to get worse, and then someone validates the review that gets worse, and then all of a sudden you've got this momentum of 2 star, 3 star, bad reviews that are saying, couch wasn't comfortable, it was torn up, the hot tub didn't work, whatever it is. That is a very slippery slope down to the bottom, and it's important to be proactive and make sure that you are delivering, like Jordan said, on this trust aspect. And I will say it's equally inverse, right? So you could crash as fast as you could just keep climbing if it is something that you care about by refreshing, making sure that everyone's taken care of. So
Yep.
which actually is a good segue into lens number 5, which is maintenance. Maintenance normally passes. I'll say that right now. Like, there's very few things that you can do in your unique space that fails the maintenance test. However, there are some. So if the perceived revenue increase and the perceived booking increase, occupancy increase that you're going to get doesn't outweigh what it costs to maintain that, then don't do it. Right? If it's going to decrease your revenue over time, don't do it. And a couple examples that I had of this are like extreme activities, right? So if you're going to do a zip line at your listing, or if you're going to do a rock wall at your listing, and to maintain those things requires a specialty like person there, like a certified person there to operate it, and inspections and permits and increased insurance. But you think that that's only going to increase your listing, $1,000 a month. It's $2,000 a month to maintain. Like, don't do it. That one's pretty self-explanatory. However, you would be surprised how many people that we talk to that don't take into consideration insurance. They don't take into consideration the permits and certifications and those kind of things. So just making sure that that last lens that you look at is, yes, that it'll stop the scroll, it'll hit the emotion, it'll build value, it'll add trust to the user before they book, but then it's going to be double the revenue that it generates in order to maintain. I would say don't do it. There are too many good ideas. Don't be afraid to say, no, this one doesn't work right now, because this is step one. You're going to get so emotionally attached to the idea with every phase that it passes. I'd say the moment that you find one that fails, let it go and find another idea. There are thousands. And if you guys need an idea, email us and tell us what you're thinking, and we will send you on another direction, because there are so many that we see. It's not even fun.
Yeah, the maintenance piece is interesting because, a lot of people that are, I would say, pivoting over to the unique and experiential stays space, they have these glorified ideas. And I will admit, at times I've had these wild and crazy ideas, and I'm appreciative that I have a amazing co-host and partner who at times will be like, no, probably not going to work. But also like pushing the envelope on some of those things, be like, really challenge yourself on, could that be something that would work? Now, obviously continuing to vet as you go through to be like, okay, yeah, it could work. But to your point on the maintenance, like, there are these 10 failure points where this could fail or end up costing you exponentially more than I realized. And that's one of the quicker ways for a property to fail, is just the spike in maintenance and things you did not account for because you did try to be so unique. And then you start to pile on bad reviews from it because, hey, like something was broke or wasn't operational, or the guy who was supposed to help with the zip line at your property didn't show up that day, so they didn't get to experience it. They're going to leave a 3-star review because they're
Yes.
mad because they paid so much money to come experience this. But Jimmy, who's running the zip line station, decided he didn't want to show up, right? It's just thinking through those. And I don't think everyone's adding a zip line to their place, but just making sure you think through what the ramifications of something like that, especially in the unique space, is once you implement, because a lot of times they can look great on paper and look great in pictures, but the moment you go to implement it, like, and also too, if you put something in place, I'll use a simple example from like a hot tub perspective. People can learn how to manage and maintain hot tubs. But I think a lot of people just think like, well, I'll just add a hot tub and the cleaner will take care of it. Not all cleaners understand how to drain, fill, balance, all that stuff with a hot tub. And if you don't account for that, there's a decent chance you're going to have a failure point there where your cleaner doesn't know how to manage it. So you have foggy water, which leads to bad reviews, right? It's just thinking through that to say, make sure you give it some thought of what the downstream impacts to that is from a maintenance perspective, whether that be maintenance on the item itself or just upkeep of, balancing a hot tub.
We actually had one of our investors stayed at a property in Oregon, in Bend, Oregon, and it was an Evolve managed property. And I was like, oh, how'd that go? And he's like, well, let me tell you the things that went wrong within the first 2 hours. And it was like a list of like 15 things. It was just awful. It was the exact same experience I had staying in one. But one of the things that he brought up was the hot tub. He's like, we got in there and we turned the jets on, and it was like you put a bottle of Dawn detergent in there. Like the foam just went, oh no, and took over. He's like, it wasn't usable. And it is like, that's just the maintenance. I was thinking the same thing. I saw, actually, there's a really awesome guy that I follow on Twitter. I'm going to kind of pick apart the idea that he had for this thing, because I don't know how I was very curious at how it would work. But this guy on Twitter posted a blacklit, like glow in the dark putt-putt course inside the house. And I was like, that is awesome, firstly. And then my very next thought was, I wonder how many things could go wrong with that. Clubs get stolen, lights go out, you can't see anything, green starts coming apart. Like there's so many different things that I see potentially going wrong. And he's really good at what he does. So he's probably thought through all of this and has it all answered, and it's not a big deal. That being said, myself, if I would put that in there, the maintenance on that and the potential like risks and headaches, customer complaints that I would get, it's like I'd be 50-50 on that one as to whether or not I'm going to do that. But
Right. Now on the flip side, I think with that, and I think it was to your point of, for a scenario like that, if you're like, this is a great idea, it's gonna bring in 10% more, 15% more revenue. Great, I'm gonna implement it. And then you implement it and you're like, well, it's there. Like it's gonna bring in 15%. Be like, yeah, but like what happens when the clubs get stolen? Oh, well, I didn't think through that. I didn't think people would steal the clubs. What happens when the balls go missing? It's like, oh, I didn't think through that. What happens when someone scuffs up the wall because the pig looks great on the
yep.
pictures now, but someone had a few too many beverages and put a hole in the wall, or because they got mad because they missed a 2-foot putt or something. Like there's all these certain scenarios that I think you just need to be proactive in thinking through. And it's like, I think you can definitely, yeah. Again, I'm the type, like, I'm gonna prove people wrong. Like I feel confident I could implement a glow in the dark golf complex in our properties and take care of it. And I think because we think about it up front to say, what are the possible things that could go wrong? Then we make that decision of either, do we want to deal with it? Yes or no. And if we say yes, okay, great. What systems and processes have to be in place to minimize our involvement through implementing that amenity? I think a lot of people don't think through it like that. If you think through it like that, I think it can be very successful. But if you don't, you are just setting up recipe for disaster, to where it will be great for the first, I'll say 4 to 6 months. Then it's going to not slowly deteriorate, but the risk increases because you're going to get more people through. You're going to get more traffic. There's going to be more wear and tear. There's going to be more clubs going missing because, this guy wanted the one red rubber putter or whatever it may be. But you have to think through it more than just service level. Great idea, going to increase revenue. Great. That's not enough. You have to dig deeper.
Yep. I completely agree with that. And I think a lot of that goes into your team too.
Yep.
If you're having doubts about your team and you're not sure who to hire, like be real cautious about the maintenance phase. But if you're, we've got a rock solid team in a couple of locations that we're in, and it makes decisions so much easier, where it's like, yeah, it's going to cost us a little money to maintain this, but like, let's go have a conversation with them, make sure that they know how to do it. They're trained on how to do it. They're willing to do it and figure out what those costs are, and then, move forward. And you can really trust that people are able to do that. That's a big part.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked through 5 different perspectives, and we probably don't have time to dive into it on today's podcast. Maybe we can do next week or a future week. But you go through these 5 lenses, right? Start to finish. You go through 1, take the glasses off, put the new lens on. Go through 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say you go through all 5, right? And you say, boom, passed every single test from what from the thumb stop, from the value, from the emotion, from, I'm missing a few. I should know these. I should have these memorized. Trust and maintenance. Those 5, right? Then what? Right? Then what? What do you do after that?
I go to a tarot card reader, and if she says yes, I go forward.
And that's a unique. that's a unique amenity right there. She just comes with the
like, look, I got the emotion. Will the finances work? She says yes. I'm like, we're in, moving forward. Like, Susan or Crystal or whatever her name is said yes, we're in.
Perfect. No. End of podcast. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we don't do that. Then you go into the numbers side, right? We call them the cornerstones. So it's not as emotion based. It's not as, what is it? It's non-tangible. Like we've just got all these things here where it's like, it's thoughts, it's gut feel, they're all emotions, right? And that kind of thing. The other side is not. The other side is numbers. The other side is putting your performance together, like figuring out, will this thing actually make money? Where are the comparables that you can use? Because they're not going to be in your market. And how far do you have to break those down? Like, do you have to go and look at, the averages of what a hot tub versus non-hot tub property across America actually increases? Do you have to pull, unique properties versus non-unique? And like Jordan had put that sheet together, like A-frames versus monoslopes versus, just standard unique builds versus cave houses versus all these other ones. And there's so many different ways to look at it, but we've got the 5 cornerstones that break down each of those sections to say at the end of the day, like, yes, this will actually make money. And what you'll find is it's a very non-traditional method. There is no Google Chrome plugin. There is no that you can just push a button and find out whether or not this is good. And there's a lot of those out in real estate now. This is not one of those markets. But once you finish this process, like you have tried so hard to play devil's advocate and disprove yourself that when you get to the end, you're like, this has to work. Right.
Mhm.
And if you go through this process with investors, they will ask you, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you've already thought it out. And then you're like, no, I did that here. Check this out.
Yep. It's doing that due diligence. It's more than just the hour of research, grabbing the address, popping it in AirDNA, popping in wherever, and be like, "Oh, well, it says it's going to make 110,000. Great, I'll move forward with it." Guilty as charged. Like that was me on my very first deal. Like I was excited. I was listening to everyone that I was surrounding myself with. They're like, "Oh, it'll be great," and had you know friends and family be like, "Oh my gosh, like that place is gorgeous. Like, why is it not booking out?" Right. And I will say it's because I didn't go through all of these steps in depth, didn't give them the necessary time. Because if you, at the end of the day, you go through these 5 lenses and then you dive through these 5 cornerstones, you're like, man, like there's no way this won't, I can't figure out a way that this won't work and that this won't make money. Even, when you do your pro forma, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll do like worst case scenario, most likely case scenario, and best case scenario. You lay out the 3 different situations of what you can do from a numbers perspective. And if you can, if worst case scenario is cash flowing for you, then it's, for me, it's like, hey, move forward.
Yeah.
Move forward with that deal and make it happen.
Yeah.
There's going to be things you got to figure out along the way, but yeah, it's
Always are.
you got to do that due diligence. It's so
Yep.
critical. It's even more critical from a unique perspective because there's a lot more components that go into it. But if you do it the right way, you look through the 5 lenses, you go through those cornerstones, you just do the proper due diligence, it can pay tenfold on the backside. And
Yep.
we are, and
Well,
we're seeing that with our properties,
yep.
Rockhaven and Cooper Pines. Like we are seeing the numbers come in, and it's because we did that work up front to be like, okay, we've delivered
Yep.
on everything we delivered on. We did the research, we did all the back end due diligence, and we're benefiting from it.
Yep. And I will say too that to your point of if you can make the worst case scenario numbers, I had someone ask me that today. They're like, well, what if you added all these other services? And I was like, is it hard to add those services to an existing running, STR business? And he was like, no, not at all. And I was like, so let's make it work without it. I was like, what if the numbers are great without it? And then we launch and we want to add that in. He's like, that's really smart. I was like, it's a really good way to under promise and over deliver for sure.
Yep.
So
It's
yeah.
it's exciting stuff. I think there's a lot of upside when it comes to unique short-term rentals. It just, you need to make sure you're doing the proper due diligence because I can't remember if it was a tweet or something the other day. Like a lot of times, if you go into a deal too fast without looking through things from the right perspective, the right angles, the right lens, I think they said like 45% of investors said they basically like ruin their financial situation with their first deal because they saw something on Zillow, they heard from someone on Facebook or an online group. They're like, well, if they're making 100,000, I can make
Yep.
100,000. So like, I spent an hour, found this property. Why wouldn't it do the same? Right? There's way more to it, and so many other things that go into it on delivering and executing. So
The hardest part of that is just not getting emotionally connected. These things are so fun and so sexy, and there's so much potential upside and whatnot that you really overlook in the emotional phase when you're first starting out. You really overlook like what could actually go wrong. So if you only look at it from that lens, and then all the things that you find that can go wrong and all of the ways that the numbers that you're looking at could be incorrect, and you're still okay with it, perfect. Keep going.
right. Yeah. I think there's that you still definitely want to keep some emotion in it, but don't let emotion be the number one driver. Because if you're just like, oh, well, this thing just won't, it's gonna make money because I think it looks great, or I think this property is gonna do well because I like it. Like, great, I'm
Mhm.
glad you like it, but is a whole demographic of people also going to like it and want to come experience and
Yes.
want to come stay there? That's the biggest
That
kicker.
last that last email has that. I was like, if you don't like it, I don't care
Right.
because I want to see views going up and to the right from a large quantity of people in your opinion or my opinion or some stranger that saw it in an email's opinion. does not matter to me if everyone else that's seeing it is making that trend line move up and to the right. You guys need to utilize like the big data that's out there from these companies like
Mhm.
Airbnb, Instagram, TikTok, whatever.
Right. And then again, it's not to say you don't want to have emotion in it, because if you are emotionless with a property, you're not going to be as motivated for it. So you're not going to put as much time into the design and all these things. And it's just going to snowball down the hill to where if you're just upfront, it's like, oh, it's just a deal. I don't really care. Like, let's just get it listed. Like, that's not the right approach. But also being like, this thing is fail proof. I looked at it for 30 minutes. I saw 20 other properties. It's gonna do
Yep.
great. I love it. I wanted a beach house. I wanted this. I wanted a house in the mountains, whatever it may be. That's not enough for it to be successful. And I think a lot of people fall victim to that. Again, I did on your first deal, and you need to take the time to think through it, but also sprinkle in some emotion, but don't let it be the number one driver.
Yep.
So,
Agreed.
but man, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Anything else to add? I love this concept of the 5 lenses. I'm really disappointed in myself. I will say this, that I didn't have
Should
5.
have.
I had
Yep.
5 pairs of sunglasses ready to rock and roll. I was just gonna boop,
Yep.
boop, 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 and I wasn't even gonna tell you. I was just gonna do it. And they are in the kitchen, and I'm disappointed in myself. So,
That's awesome. That's next time.
next time, there's always next time. So,
Yeah.
well, with that, that does it. Another episode of the Hideaways Show Behind the Curtain edition. Mike, excited to keep rocking and rolling along this unique short-term rental journey with you. As always, I appreciate the time, and we'll see you next week.